What up, Vibers? It's your boy, Kai. Welcome to another episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined by someone who has been called America's leading LGBT plus expert in the New York Times, and for good reason. Dr. Kryss Shane has spent nearly 30 years helping schools, workplaces, and medical spaces become more inclusive and supportive for everybody. She's a speaker, professor, therapist, and author of 4 game-changing books. Today, we're talking all about what it means to be an activist, even when it's not about you. I want to welcome our guest, Dr. Kryss Shane, to the show. Hi. How are
Hi,
you?
happy Pride Month.
Yes. Oh my God. Wait, is it? No.
It's June.
Wait, June.
June is Pride Month.
I'm like, that's why I got confused. I'm like, no, it's June, but it's still May. Let me have my birthday month. I'm not ready for June
you get the
yet.
whole month.
I
You're
get
a
the
whole
whole
month
month.
birthday celebrator.
I'm a whole monther. So like that's why I was like, wait, Pride Month is not that's not yet.
Well, no, it's not yet when we're recording it, but it will be when our audience is hearing it. So.
Yes.
And also, I'm starting to celebrate it early because there can never be too much pride to me.
I agree.
No such thing as too much pride or too much cheese or too much alone time.
Yes.
I'm a fan of them all.
It's Pride year, it's Pride millennium, century,
Yes.
all that stuff.
Yes.
No, I'm really excited to have you here to talk about these things, and also we might sprinkle some cheese in there, potentially. Yeah. So in the intro, and I mentioned this, and I think this is a cool flex. You've been called America's leading LGBT plus expert by the New York Times. How did that title land with you the first time you saw it?
It was weird. I still think it's weird. I've also been on a television show, and it's weird to me when people approach like they know me. I get that introvert panic followed by the anxiety of they know me. Why do I not know who they are? I'm the worst person on the planet that I don't recognize them. But I also feel like that happens in other aspects. Like I am somebody on Instagram who has watched many of your videos. So I keep right now, like my brain keeps saying, he's actually talking to you. You're supposed to talk back. Yes. You're not just watching a video.
Yeah, that's how you have to do it. I'm not talking to a screen right now. I am talking to you specifically.
I'm waiting for you with a different hat to respond to you because that's the way I'm so used to seeing you. So
yeah,
it's crazy.
That's a really cool flex though to be labeled that by the New York Times, and I guess that kind of leads me to my first question is like I want to go back a little bit. What initially pulled you into activism and advocacy work in the first place?
It really started with the Broadway show Rent. I learned about it when I was fairly young, and the character of Angel really spoke to me.
Sure.
And I came to know many members of the cast from that recording are now friends of mine, which is really crazy to me. Freddie Walker Brown, who originated the role of Joanne, actually sang me a song when I finished my PhD to the song Donka Shane. She made it Dr. Shane. And I like had an out of my own body experience when she sent it to me because she used pictures she found from like social media and put it together and sent it on the day I graduated. And I could not contain like the happiness energy in my body needed somewhere to go.
That's
I'm only like 5 feet tall, so I don't have a lot of space to hold my emotions very well. But I really learned about transgender people, and the more questions I asked, the fewer answers I got. And then I started volunteering, and then I started to meet people within the community and really learning about this isn't those people hypothetically in the air that we're imagining. It was this friend who is this way, or this person who lives this life, or somebody else who had this experience, real people that I actually knew. And it felt much more personal to be supportive and to do what I could with any platform I had or will ever have to show up for people who don't get the privilege of the platform. And, I know privilege is a buzzword. I feel like there is privilege that I was born with, like skin color, being an American citizen, speaking English fluently.
Sure.
And then what I always call earned privilege, which is things like I have a bunch of advanced degrees. I mean, they're up on the wall.
Flex it, keep flexing.
Yeah, I got the student loan debt to prove it.
Oh, you and me both.
Oh man. But I think there's earned privilege.
Yes.
I worked my tail off to earn those degrees. And also those degrees give me a level of privilege and a title in front of my name
Yes.
that makes people listen more.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, the rent I pay to live on the planet is to make the most of what I have access to, including all those privileges.
Right, right. It's funny that you had mentioned rent because I, as a performer, I've done rent. Oh, bye, Sam. I've done rents 4 times. I've played Tom Collins 3 times, and I played Benny 1 time.
Um,
And
Please don't sing the reprise because I'll cry.
oh no, 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 I won't do that. I won't do that to you. I will act out the whole show right now for you. Let's just do that. I can do
Okay,
that.
if you can play Roger, we can totally light my candle the whole heck out of this whole thing
So
because I can do that.
that's actually my dream role in the show, and like I would never get cast in that in it. I think I should though. When I was in college, it came down. I was considered for 2 roles. I was considered for Collins and Roger, and they cast me as Collins, but I was so mad. I'm like, I want to play Roger. I want there to be a black Roger. I think that'd be
Yes.
fire. I learned how to play guitar and everything. Like I was ready to go, but they
Yeah.
cast they cast me as Collins.
When the Broadway tour went out in 2009,
Yeah.
I had been driving. It opened in Cleveland, and I was in Ohio at the time, so I went.
Hmm.
And I had been driving to the theater listening to the original company soundtrack,
Yeah.
and I got invited to the opening tour party
Amazing.
and went to the party. And then they didn't want to walk in the ice because it was January, back to the hotel. So
Yeah.
next thing I know, I've got Anthony Rapp and Adam Pascal in my car, and I'm
What?
driving because I'm like, I'll drive you up the street so you don't have to walk on the ice. I get that. And everything's fine. And I'm trying to play it cool and not geek
Yeah.
out about them in front of them because I had just met them. And I start my car, and their own voices came out of my speakers. And I like looked up at the rearview mirror, saw their faces, and just quietly pushed the off button and then said nothing about the whole thing. But they've
Oh
both
my
become dear
God.
friends since then. And they
Yeah.
promised me they don't remember that embarrassing moment of mine.
That's so
So
funny.
I think they probably do, and they're being very kind.
That's amazing. Well, tell them that they have a major fan over here as well. And actually, it's funny. My next tattoo is "No Day But Today," so
Nice.
that's my next tattoo anyway. So that's really cool. Yeah,
My
I'm a major
first book,
fan.
one of the people that gets thanked in it is Jonathan Larson.
No way. No
Hmm.
way. That's Oh man, I can go on for
I know we could
days
make
and
this
days
whole
about.
thing
I
just rent.
know.
Yeah.
I know. I Because I have so many stories. But can you think of a moment earlier in your career that made you think, okay, this is the type of work that I'm meant to be doing? It kind of like a moment that validated your journey and the path that you wanted to go on.
I typically will tell people when I get brought into companies as part of their training process or their onboarding process,
Hmm.
rather than because they've chosen to be at a training or a talk. At the end of it, I will tell them, do me a favor. If you want to take action, let one person in your life know that you came to this training. That's all
Hmm.
you got to do.
Hmm.
And I pretty regularly will get an email within a month or so from a lot of different people saying, the craziest thing happened. Right after your training, I found out that my neighbor, my cousin, my nephew, my daughter, my whoever is actually gay or identifies as trans or
Yeah.
is asexual. And I knew how to handle it because I had been in that training with you. Isn't that
Hmm.
crazy? What a coincidence. And I have found that most of the time, it isn't a coincidence. It's that once that person let people know they had some education, they had an open mind,
Hmm.
they were a safe person to come out to, people started to come out to them.
Right.
And I love that. I love that that person got to have a more authentic relationship with someone in their life because they came to something I trained.
Yeah.
And I've
Yeah.
found that being able to be on the stage or the guide from the side or wherever I am, depending on the audience, lets me let those people who I'll never meet probably feel like somebody is safer for them, that they get to have them in their life because that training happened.
Right. Right. You wear so many hats on this path,
So many.
like so many hats. Like you're dual licensed mental health professional, author of multiple books, professor. You might even be a DJ. Like you might be Batman. I don't know. There's a number of things that
Have you ever seen
that
us
you
in the
might be.
same room at the same
I'm
time?
just saying. I'm
I'm
just
just
saying.
saying.
But like out of all the hats that you wear, what hat feels the most you? Which one is you the most?
I think they all are, but that's
Yeah.
because for me, they all are rooted
That's the
in
cop-out answer. That's
no.
the cop-out.
Well,
I'm
hold
kidding.
on,
I'm
hold
kidding.
on.
I'm kidding.
I mean, also cheese lover. For me, cheese pizza lover is up there. I've had people
Yes.
tell me that they think I might be part Ninja Turtle for the amount of pizza that I eat. I will tell you, I actually know the actor who played Michelangelo in the 90s Ninja Turtle movies, which are the best ones. I don't care who wants to argue that. It's just true. And he
That
endorsed my
is
first
yes.
book. He
Hmm.
had nothing to do with my book at all, but I knew for my own sake as a human, saying a Ninja Turtle endorsed my book just felt good.
It feels.
So,
I wish a Ninja Turtle would endorse this podcast. Like I would feel
right,
validated. Like this
right.
is what I do. This is why I do this.
Yeah. That's really what we all do anything for is for Ninja Turtle praise and approval.
Yes, obviously.
But I feel like everything I do is rooted in that piece of sort of activism and mindfulness of when I'm teaching, I'm encouraging students to think about people who are different than what the textbook tells them.
Hmm.
Whether it's because the textbooks only show white people, or they only
Hmm.
show people who are able bodied, or
Yeah.
they don't acknowledge somebody who might have a learning difference or a different style in communication, or who might be nonverbal, all those sorts of things when I'm teaching are always through the lens of activism.
Yeah.
And when I'm writing, it's always from the perspective that I think most people would do better if they knew better.
Hmm.
And so I don't come into it thinking if you don't agree with me or you don't support this or this person, you're a horrible person. I
Right.
come at it as there's probably some information you may not have, which provide knowledge gaps. If I can fill in those gaps, you go from there with that information and make your decisions on where you stand on different values.
Right, right. Well, one thing that I appreciate, I mean, I appreciate many things, but one of the things that I appreciate is that about you is that you advocate fiercely for so many different identities that you don't personally hold, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you speak up for a lot of different communities and identities. And I think that's something that a lot of people should be considering doing, hopefully. But what does it look like for somebody to show up without centering themselves in the conversation?
I think a lot of it is recognizing that the intention and the impact
Hmm.
of behavior is not always the same thing.
Sure.
I know what my intentions are before I say something, but if what I say hurts somebody's feelings, being able to recognize that it's not now time for me to argue, I didn't mean to. It's
Hmm.
now the time for me to acknowledge, even though I didn't mean to, this was the impact I had on another person and
Yeah.
taking ownership of that. I think it's looking at the realities of most people demographics didn't bring their own demise.
Hmm.
So it's largely been, you know, white people. In a lot of ways, it's white people that caused racism and continue to perpetuate racism intentionally or because that's just the way we've been taught. It is straight people that have the homophobia or the transphobia or the biphobia. And so I believe that it's really important that we acknowledge where we're the cause because I don't think that it's right that somebody should have to suffer under it and also be the one to save it.
Right.
And I think a
Right.
lot of it, for example, on social media, I will post not just very obvious political statements about things, but I post a lot of Black boy joy, a lot
Hmm.
of strong white women speaking, supporting the Black community,
Hmm.
parents supporting their gay children,
Yeah.
looking at the incredible moments that Black women have experienced, Black babies, and adorable moments that they have. Because
Right.
I'm not trying to just say, here's what I stand for, stand with me. But I want people who are looking at my social media to just have it threaded within their feed of here's a little Black boy and he's
Hmm.
saying something adorable or
Yeah.
he's dancing some adorable way.
Hmm.
Because I think that humanizes people in ways that
Yes.
so often we get taught those people over there, they're not like us over here.
Right.
And the
Right.
more we
Right.
can see ourselves in other people, the more I think we're more and more likely to advocate and support them.
You would think that it would go without saying that people need to practice empathy,
Mm.
but I feel like that's missing in a lot of the conversations that we have just about people that are not us, right? And I just feel like empathy is missing. Um, Another thing that you do, and this is I admire you for this because this is not easy. You people that work in advocacy, they have to straddle that fine line between allyship and overstepping,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's hard. It's hard to like find that middle ground. So how do you go about navigating that? Like how do you personally be like, okay, I'm gonna advocate for this, but I'm gonna try not to overstep and potentially drown out other
Mm-hmm.
voices or whatever it may be. How do you navigate that?
I mean, I don't think I always get it right. I don't think
Sure.
everybody or anybody always
Hmm.
gets it right. It's forever a learning process. I think for me, I look at, am I the right person for the request? So if I get asked to be on a panel, I look and see who else is on the panel. If everybody on that panel are white people, if the topic isn't about being white and whatever, I will ask them. I'll point out to that organization, you've got everybody that's on here is white people. Are there other people being invited? And if
Yeah.
they tell me no, I will say and have said to them, let me recommend somebody else who I think is a better fit for this.
Right.
And there are times that absolutely sucks because there are times I'm living on ramen in my life and I
Hmm.
really could have used that money.
Sure.
But I
Sure.
always I need to be able to look at myself in the mirror.
Yes.
And if I'm taking work away from somebody else who has a more authentic personal experience, I can't look at me that way. I
Hmm.
can't say something and then not follow it.
Right.
Even
Right.
looking at the books that I've written, because I felt like I took from the LGBT plus community, it only made sense for me that 100% of my author profits from any of my books gets donated to a trans youth organization. And it's not
Hmm.
something that I have super publicized
Yeah.
because I'm not doing it so people pat me on the head and tell me how great I am for doing it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it because I believe it's the right thing to do.
Hmm.
And I think that's the best that any of us can do. And as
Yeah.
long as we're trying, I think the effort means a lot. I think continuing to learn from people means a lot. And looking at, you know, what does my social media feed echo? Am I
Yeah.
seeing things? If you're seeing a lot of like white privilege videos, you're clicking on some stuff that's giving you an algorithm that's telling you something.
I've tried to explain this to people all the time because like sometimes like I'll have friends and they'll tell on themselves sometimes
Mm-hmm.
because they'll be like, oh, my feed is filled with all this uh you know uh white these white men talking about black fatigue, and I'm like, I'm sorry, your feed is full of that.
Right.
That means you're watching it, you're engaging with it. How you're engaging with it, maybe I don't know, maybe you're commenting and saying like, hey, shut up or whatever, but like either way you're engaging
Right.
you're engaging with it. Like that, it's gonna put stuff in front of you that they think that you want to watch, the stuff that you're engaging in. That's why I get cheese videos.
Right. Me
That's
too.
that's why I get musical theater stuff. That's why I get basketball. That's why I
Right.
get roller coasters. And like because we're all on different sides. So people telling themselves all the time when they're like, oh my god, everybody's talking about this and this. I'm like, everybody on your feed's talking about
Right.
that.
Right.
Everybody on your feed's feeling this way, not
Yeah.
mine.
I get a lot of tie dye. I get a lot of cheese videos and pizza
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah.
Um, I never get Chicago pizza videos though, because I
Mm.
stand pretty strongly that New York pizza is pizza. I don't know what Chicagoans should call what they, even if they just called it deep dish and left the word pizza off.
Okay. All right.
Don't
I'm
tell me
gonna
it's
have to
pizza. I
stop
know,
you.
I
I'm,
know we're
I'm
gonna
gonna
have to
have
battle on this.
to
I know.
I'm gonna have to stop because first of all, I'm a Jersey boy, so like I have a say. I'm allowed to have a say here
All
because
right.
New Jersey, especially at the shore, has the best pizza, hands down. I will die on that hill. Right, has better pizza than any other pizza in the world, not the world, in the country. Right.
Okay.
Now, with that said, I do love New York pizza. It's delicious,
Why do I feel like
but
there's a but?
I
Oh
there is
no.
a but. There is a but. I worked for 7 years at Uno Chicago Bar and Grill. And so I got to witness the making and the pleasure of said deep dish pizza.
Ugh.
And it is 100% pizza. It is
It
pizza.
just, I think when I hear the word pizza, if you tell me we're getting pizza tonight,
Yeah,
I'm picturing New York pizza because I'm a New Yorker.
fair.
And if you bring me Chicago, it's not that I have nothing wrong with it. I'm happy to eat it. It just is a different food. It should be called a different thing. Like,
Okay.
like pasta is primarily the same ingredients as pizza, but they're two different things.
Okay. Okay. So are you anti-Sicilian pizza?
I'm not anti any kind of pizza as a religious belief, but I do sort of feel like that's its own that should be its own category. To tell me it's Sicilian and I'm good with it. I just want to
Yes.
know so I can plan in my mind what I'm going to be consuming later.
I love pizza, but there's one pizza that should not exist, and that's pineapple pizza. Hawaiian pizza should not exist. I will die on that hill. I hate it. I hate the concept. I hate the idea of it. Whoever came up with it, I want to flick them in the eyeball. Like I cannot.
Wow.
Like why?
I
Why?
appreciate the specificity of exactly what
Yes.
you want to do to that person.
Yes. Like there. That's I've been thinking about this my entire life. It's the word. Like why? Why put pineapple on a pizza? Why? Do you like pineapple pizza?
I'm not a fan of ham. So
Mm-hmm.
normally there's ham and pineapple.
Yes.
I don't know who invented it. I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
why it took off the way it did.
Yeah.
Pineapple is one of those things like olives where it has like juiciness. So it's not like you can just pick it off. It's like
Yes.
you have
There's
to commit.
residual. There's residue
Right,
that's left
right.
over. Yes.
Like that's a
Yeah.
commitment. There are some other
Yes.
foods
Oh, hi,
that
Sam.
you can make decisions about,
Yeah.
but that one you're committed. You're
Yes.
committed to wanting pineapple on your pizza because you can't even if you take the bits you see off, it's in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm 100% anti pizza, or not anti pizza, anti
Whoa.
Hawaiian pizza. Yeah, I know. I had to correct myself there.
Yeah.
Anyway, anyway. See, this is my ADHDing, by the way.
I get it. I get it
Yes.
completely. I will side quest with you all day, especially when it's about food related things.
um, I know that there's a lot of people that are listening right now that want to support marginalized communities that they're not a part of, but they're not sure where to start. They're not sure where to begin. I know, especially because of the nonsense of the last couple of
Mhm.
years, there's so many people that want to speak up and just say something, but they're not sure when and how and where and all of that. So for anybody that's listening that wants to support marginalized communities that they're not a part of, where should they even begin?
I mean, I think it depends the level of commitment somebody wants to make. There are LGBT organizations, or sometimes it's a gay man's chorus, or it's a
Mhm.
transgender safe house, or whatever that's in most larger cities, whatever
Mhm.
closest city you have, or even maybe your town has something. You can show up and volunteer. Contact them, ask how you can volunteer. If you are somebody who naturally is a writer, maybe they need help with the newsletter. If you're
Mhm.
somebody who's got some strength, or you like going to the gym, or you could use the gym, maybe helping bag canned goods for a food drive. All these different ways that can tap into what you already do, um, using those skill sets to benefit a community. It's also an option if that's not something you have time or space for, or you live in a small town where there isn't anything around you. Even just looking at what happens to the people around you. Maybe it means that when you're invited to a business meeting, you notice that there aren't any women being invited, and you speak up to your boss and you ask, why is it all men here?
Yeah.
Maybe it
Yeah.
means that you're in a room and it's all white people, and you ask the question of, why is everyone in this room white people? Or
Yeah.
maybe there's somebody who's not white who you know would be a great fit, recommending that they be included in the next meeting.
Mhm. Yeah.
Or when a woman speaks an idea and a man speaks over her, piping up and just saying, I really want to hear the rest of what she just said. Or I
Mhm.
really agree with what she said. I support that idea.
Yeah.
Just acknowledging people and their talents and in their skill sets does a lot. And it doesn't feel to us who give that attention sometimes. So, what I said one thing, it can feel like that when the one thing is being given to you. And at a time where we may not be able to have employee resource groups, or organizations, or gay straight alliances in schools or on a
Mhm.
campus, showing up and speaking up, even in small ways, adds up. It can
Mhm.
be that you're in a restaurant and you hear someone use a slur at another table. I am
Mhm.
absolutely one where people at the table will go, there she goes. We know she's going, because I'll get up and
Yeah.
say something to that table.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
I think we do the best we can with the opportunities we're presented.
Yeah.
I think looking to see what your community offers, if anything, it might be that you live near the beach and you bring up an idea of, why can people in wheelchairs not get down to the water? Some communities have built structures in the sand,
Mhm.
ramps. that allows somebody in a wheelchair to go straight down to the water. Those types of things in different communities can be no big deal, especially if you're someone who's handy. You could help them build it.
Right.
But really looking at who is missing from the table, who's missing from the conversation, and who can I ask about why that is.
Right. It's what the place. There's this place I used to work, that we had a lot of clients, right? And there was this one day. It was February, and they wanted to celebrate, like my job wanted to celebrate Black History Month by highlighting some of the Black clients that we have. And so they had reached out to the everybody like on the team and said, "Hey, um, give me a list of all of the businesses that are clients of ours that are Black owned." Now, me as a Black person, and one of the actually very few Black people that worked in this organization, there was maybe like 3 of us. We saw this email come through, and we all looked at each other and we started cracking up. And the reason that we started cracking up was because we knew that out of the 500 clients that we had, none of them were Black owned businesses. Now, we had noticed that before, because we noticed like every time a new client would come on board, it would be a like older white guy, right? So like we had noticed it. And so nobody had responded to the email. And so they sent out another email and they're like, guys, we asked you for, we need this
Sure.
list, so blah, blah. So myself and one of my colleagues, Black colleagues, we went into our our COO's office and we're like, I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this. And so, and what I said to him was like, don't, like, we had noticed this a long time ago, right? But you, the whole team has not noticed it because you don't really think about that kind of stuff like from your end. But like, and I asked him this, I said, don't you find that weird though, that like we have 500 clients and not a single one is a business owned by a Black person? Not a single one. You don't find that weird? And so we went to the sales team and we're like, how are you selling, like, how are you finding these clients? Because like none of them are Black.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave like just every excuse in the book. They're like, well, the type of clients that we look for, don't blah, 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 like all this stuff. And I'm like, this is not acceptable to me. You know, it's
Right.
just not acceptable, because they just didn't think it was an important thing only until they needed to, only when it became a performative thing, when they wanted to highlight the Black owned
Mm-hmm.
businesses in the organization, only to realize that they have none. And
Yeah.
like now it's a problem, but it's something that myself and a couple other people, we had already noticed. And I know for a fact that this is not a story that is unique to me. That there's a lot of organizations and people that you know it's just we're in the minority, and like people don't even think about it because it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
like it's not even something that crosses their mind. But like even little things that this place, like I was the highest ranking person of color there, and there was a maybe about 125 people that worked in this building at this company, and out of the 125, uh, three of us were Black, three, right? And so I said to our hiring coordinator, I said, what
Mm-hmm.
can we, like, why are we, like, because I was doing all the interviews, like the hiring coordinator would put the people in front of me and I'm like, are there any Black people? And their excuse was, well, no, but like we just put the best person, in front of you, where, no Black people are applying. And I'm like, do people even know that this is an opportunity for them? Because
Right.
like I work in an industry where I didn't even know it was an industry until I got to college. And I grew up in a predominantly Black neighborhood. And I didn't even know this was an opportunity that existed. Now I do. So who's to tell that how many people out there that are Black that don't know that this opportunity even exists, so they can't even apply in the first place. So I told them, I know I said it's not something that you can fix alone, but like it's something that I want you to keep in mind when you're going out recruiting people.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that more organizations had these types of conversations, because at that point it's like it's not about being woke, which I can't stand, like the whole they're hiring Black people just because they're being woke. No, like we don't have the same opportunities. We don't.
Yeah.
And like
It's
people,
that, and
it's
I've been at conferences, at
yeah,
inclusion specific conferences,
yeah,
where it's a catered meal, and
hmm,
the person in charge is white, and all
hmm,
of the servers and all of the cooks are not white.
yes,
And I've been at conferences for inclusion where there have been single stall bathrooms that have had gender markers on them,
hmm,
when that certainly didn't matter. And
yeah.
as you said, it's not about being woke. I think that's a weird, the bastardization of that whole word
It's
and its
so
intention is
weird.
bizarre.
It's so weird to
Why
me.
people
I
talk about sleeping through things by choice and it's wrong to be aware of what goes on around you, it's lost on
It's
me.
so weird.
Mhm.
I will never ever understand it. Like I don't get it. I don't get it.
I don't understand the bragging about being anti woke, because I've always felt like if I don't know something, I want to know. I'm going to go
Yeah.
learn it. I'm kind of a
Yeah.
lifelong learner that way, but I certainly wouldn't go bragging about how unintelligent I am about it. I mean, I will tell you, I have no sense of direction. If you spin me around in my driveway, I can't find
Yeah.
my way home. It is bad. But like when it comes to other people, I'm not bragging about how little I know about some topics and
Mhm.
about how intentionally ignorant I keep myself
It's a weird
because that makes me
flex.
cool. Is it a flex?
It
What's the
to
opposite of a
them,
flex?
to them, but like I think it's because a lot of them just feel threatened by the existence of different people, and that like they're going to lose the power that they
Right,
have, and so
right.
they feel threatened. But like giving an opportunity to people of color or to the people in the LGBTQ plus community, it's not, you're not like, it's not a threat, it's an opportunity that they wouldn't normally have.
Right. And it's still based on the fact that that person is well qualified.
Yes.
I wrote a lot,
Yes.
especially in my business book,
Hmm.
about how to do better when it comes to interviewing and where to advertise
Yeah.
and how to be mindful about when you're missing entire demographics of people.
Yes.
It's not them that's getting it wrong, it's you if you're the person in charge of those decisions.
Yes. And
Or if
it's
you're
an,
getting a bunch of interviews, also being mindful of the fact that that needs to be a safe work environment.
it does.
Because
Yes.
if that job or any job goes out and says, fine, I'll find some Black people to hire, and they hire them into the roles where it's not safe for them to be who they are,
Hmm.
where they're not going to get the same opportunities to earn promotion or earn a bonus or earn a golf trip,
Hmm.
depending on the industry we're talking about,
Yeah.
that's not very good either.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw there was this picture I saw online, and it drove me crazy. It was a picture of 3 Black men in court. One was a cop, like that was just in the court. One was a lawyer, and one was the defendant. Right. So it was 3 Black men just in this picture, and the caption of the picture said something along the lines of, "Your skin color doesn't play a role in whether you succeed in life or not. It's a choice. It's the choices that you make." And I'm like, that's a broad stroke. That's a
Wow.
broad stroke blanket statement to say, because that's not true. I think you're
No, and
missing a
it's never
couple
been
factors
true.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also with that whole idea, especially in dating, of like, if he wanted to, he would.
Sure, sure.
I
Hmm.
I love that idea in theory. I
Yeah.
love that the intention is to make people
Yes, I get the
stop dating
intention.
people who treat them
Yes,
badly.
yes.
I also think there are plenty of people with plenty of reasons why they're not sending you 30 dozen roses every day, but who still love you.
or taking you to like maybe a really expensive restaurant. Like, it's not that if he wanted to, he would. No, like I want to, but I can't.
I
Like
want to lift
I
300
can't.
pounds. It doesn't mean I can.
Yeah, but I get the intention behind it, like
Right. Right.
ideology wise. Like I get it, but like it's really tough to kind of broad stroke it because there's a thing called nuance and there's a thing
Right.
called context that I think people just kind of like push to the side in order to make their very basic what do you call it, blinders up kind of point,
Mhm.
type of thing. I'm really happy that we're talking about this because it's not something that I get to talk about often. You know what I'm saying? And as a Black content creator, there's not too many Black content creators out there that talk about mental health,
Yeah.
right? Which is one of the reasons why I try to use my platform the way that I do, because like when I first started getting into social media, like I didn't see any Black men specifically, Black people in general, but definitely Black men talking about mental health. And so like I knew that if I could like maybe at least be a voice, and like maybe that would encourage other people to speak up, um and that's my goal. And what one of the things that you have said before that I try to emulate this, just in general for myself. But you have said before that your role is to educate and not just echo, right?
Hmm.
Which I think is great. Um, how, what would you say is the most uncomfortable truth that you've had to educate yourself on?
I think it's how much I don't know sometimes.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
I've gotten to a place in my academic work and in my career and been doing activism for so long
yeah,
that if I'm not careful, I can get comfortable.
yeah.
And the reality of it is sometimes it's that words change their meaning over time. If
Right.
you look at people over the age of about 40 now versus under the age of 40, the word queer means different things.
Hmm.
And it can be a really offensive slur to a
Yes.
certain demographic of people.
Sure.
And to another demographic, it's the word they use that they feel most secure in as an
Hmm.
identity.
Yeah.
And being mindful of acknowledging both sides of that and being mindful. I have a friend of mine who, this only matters for this story, but she's a beautiful Black woman and has beautiful curls. And I love when people have their hair naturally curly because so much of
Hmm.
our society has taught women, especially Black women, they need to relax their hair.
Yeah. Yeah. The
And so
beauty
I would
standards
tell
are
her
insane.
sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah, I would tell her when I would see her sometimes, oh, you're having a really good hair day. Because I loved her. And it wasn't until she pulled me aside and said, I've gotten to know you really well. And I'm pretty sure you have no idea what you're saying to me when you say this.
Right.
But good hair actually means something to Black women. That's a phrase that has a meaning to it. And I think what you're trying to do is give me a compliment. And I don't
Yeah.
think you have any clue that what you're saying is really offensive.
Sure.
And I've been
Hmm.
doing this work probably 20 years by that point.
Hmm.
And, it took me aback for a second. And then I thanked her for letting me know because I'd rather people tell me so I don't say stupid things without realizing that they're stupid things.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that's all of us in some way. I think the language evolves. I think emojis have changed things. We're kind of back in the hieroglyphic era of pictures
You're not
instead of
wrong.
words now.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? I've seen
Yeah.
icebreakers or job interview questions about which emoji are you most like.
Oh God.
I don't know what the right answer to that question is,
Yeah.
but I think realizing different generations communicate different ways.
Yeah.
I just learned I have an almost stepson who's 19, and I just learned that for that demographic, the neutral kind of smiley face emoji, the standard one, now for their generation is like sarcasm.
Oh.
Right. Right.
Okay.
And he had to tell me that because I just thought it meant I'm letting you know my tone is happy. I'm not mad at you
Yes.
because there's some of my own mental health stuff coming out. Is like, I just want to make sure you know I'm
Yes.
not mad at you because I
Yeah.
need to make sure you're not mad at me when we're talking too.
Yeah.
But I sent him something with a smiley face at the end of it, thinking like, I'm letting him know I'm not mad. I'm just reminding him of something.
Yeah.
And he called me up and was like, what was that about? And I had no clue what he meant until he explained to me what that emoji means for his generation.
Right.
I
Right.
think there's a lot to be said for recognizing how much I don't know or
Uh-huh.
how much more I can learn. And it's moments like when one of my best friends went in to give birth and she was a Black woman giving birth on the other side of the country.
Uh-huh.
It was absolutely terrifying
Yeah.
because being pregnant while Black is not safe in this country.
Right.
And that's not an
We're
opinion,
seeing
that's
that
not
right now. Yeah.
wokeism, that's
Mm-hmm.
just statistical reality.
That's correct.
And
Mm-hmm.
she was there on her own with family members, but they were also Black women.
Yeah.
And I was on the other side of the country and I had her put me on speakerphone so that I could say hello to each white person who walked in the room and introduce myself. And I absolutely used my doctor title for that
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted them to know there is a white person in a position of power who is paying attention to what they are doing and making
Yeah.
sure I was doing the best I could to prevent mistakes from happening with her. And
Yeah.
in my medical book, I wrote about pregnant while Black. And the publishers were like, maybe that's not the way you want to word that. I said, absolutely, that's the way I want to word
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because, like, again, people don't really think about this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I go jogging a lot, and like a lot of times, I'll wear a hoodie, like, and just because, like, it's just how I like to jog.
Sure.
But I also have to be mindful of how I present myself. I have to think about how I present myself. I live right now in a very gentrified community with, a lot of like white people that are also out jogging or out walking their pets, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
may be, right? I have to be mindful of my presence when I'm around because I can't chance people taking it the wrong way. For example, if I'm jogging and there's a person, like a white woman in front of me, walking in the same direction
Mm-hmm.
like as I am, I will cross the street and run on the other side because the last thing I want is to run up behind her because I have long legs, so I'm gonna be running up behind her. So, and like things that people don't even remotely think about, I have to think about that because I don't want to startle her because things could happen and things could be taken the wrong way if like a 6'1" Black man comes running from behind unexpectedly, and it's scary, and I've seen it happen. Like it's like that kind of stuff is stuff that people don't really think about. With that said, though,
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times we talk about like what people in schools and businesses and hospitals are doing wrong. But I also want to highlight some of the progress that we make because they're like you've helped schools, businesses, hospitals, and people become more inclusive. So like what are some things that you feel these places are starting to do right in 2025?
I think we're seeing more common moments where people are using pronouns.
Okay.
And sometimes they're even linking, if it's in their email signature,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they'll link to an article or a news story or something about why pronouns are important and who they could be benefiting.
Yeah.
And so that's really lovely. I think we're seeing now, um, I mean, some organizations have pulled back, but we're still seeing organizations and companies supporting Pride Month. We're still seeing the LA Dodgers doing a Pride night where they're giving out or selling rainbow related things. Disney has been doing for years
Yeah.
options that are rainbow colored.
Uh-huh.
Those moments are just they're great for publicity for those organizations, but really it's a nice moment to get to have where the people being impacted feel like they can go into a place that the rest of everybody else gets to go into every day and
Mhm.
feel seen. And I really
Yeah.
think that's what most of us want. I mean, there are
Yeah.
definitely times as an introvert, I don't want anyone to notice me. I don't want to be seen.
Yeah.
I want to just be
Yeah.
left alone. Please
Yeah.
let me go into the store, buy the thing through self
Right.
checkout. I don't want to speak to anybody today.
Right.
But
Right.
I appreciate when I have the option. I appreciate when I'm in a
Sure.
space that's safe enough for me to have a conversation.
Sure. And
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 I think they're
seen
getting better.
seen doesn't even necessarily even just mean seen like physically seen, like seen as in like just validated, like safe just in general. I feel seen, just in like theoretically, and all of that I think is really important. And especially nowadays to see companies that are still holding strong to what they
Mhm.
truly believe in. I think in today's world, especially right now, that's important more than ever. Um, there's a specific group of people I want to talk about with you, and that is the work that you have done with transgender youth, right? Um, the transgender community has obviously been getting a lot of shit,
Yeah.
unfortunately, especially recently, and it's just understandably sad and disappointing to see how the transgender community is treated nowadays. It has always been treated, but especially treated nowadays. Is there something that gives you hope as you work with transgender youth? Is there anything that gives you hope about the next generation and the future of the transgender community?
I mean, there's a lot that gives me a lot of hope. One of the things that's come out in the more recent months has been that something like 1 out of 4 of the
Uh-huh.
younger generation is identifying somewhere in the LGBT or LGBTQ or LGBT plus kind of spectrum.
Mhm.
And knowing that people who are under 18 are feeling safe enough to identify publicly that way,
Yeah.
seeing the trans flag or the rainbow flag as an emoji next to their name on social media because they're proud enough of who they are that they
Mhm.
want the public to see that, I think is amazing. And I think we've gotten a solid number of trans youth who have been pretty vocal on social media, whether it's been my family member, Jazz Jennings, or
Mhm.
Dylan Mulroney, all those people that are doing moments of their lives being shown, whether it's videos, whether it's audio, whether it's, being in the media somewhere. We have actors that are trans or that come out. Elliot Page is another one.
Mhm.
Seeing people that are coming out, taking the risk to whatever their career is because they're so authentically themselves, they don't want to hide it,
Yeah.
to me gives me a lot of hope. And I think that later generations are going to feel like they can talk about their identity the same way maybe you talk about what's going on today and how your ADHD is impacting it.
Mhm.
The same way we might talk about what our favorite kind of cheese is. Like,
Mhm.
it is not the only detail about me that matters, but
Yeah.
it's a detail I feel comfortable sharing. And I think that's where that generation is, that they've recognized someone can be simultaneously transgender and what else about them,
Sure.
rather
Right.
than it being this is the only identity I get to have if this is my identity.
Right, right. I really appreciate like your insight and knowledge here, because especially in today's world, I think this is needed more than ever. And I want to be able to give people, as we start to wrap up, some actionable items that and some things to think about, so that way when they're done listening to this episode, they can have like a plan and be like, okay, this is what I can do, especially when it excuse me, when it comes to um highlighting and advocating for communities that they're not necessarily a part of. So the first thing I want to talk about is the conversation around DEI, because obviously that's a very common talking subject
Mhm.
right now. There's obviously a lot of people that say that DEI is divisive and that it's a political move. If somebody sees that kind of conversation happening about DEI, what can they do or say in that moment?
I think a lot of it is asking follow up questions.
Mhm.
The same way to me that, like, if somebody makes a racist joke, I have
Mhm.
learned if I tell them they're being racist, it makes them defensive.
Mhm.
And then it's just an argument. They think I'm a jerk. I think they're a jerk. That doesn't get us anywhere.
Mhm.
I've learned to ask somebody to explain the joke to me.
Mhm.
They may momentarily think that I'm too stupid to understand the joke, but they figure out pretty quickly that the only way to explain the joke is to acknowledge it's because of this stereotype. And
Mhm.
I've learned to just say something like, "Oh, it's really interesting that that's a joke you decided to tell."
Mhm.
There's nothing to argue with me about,
Yeah.
but I'm allowing that person to think through, and that may help them not tell that joke again
Yeah.
or think about another joke they might tell differently.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and and I think we're all still learning. I think we need to
Mhm.
keep learning from each other. I think we need to keep, in my mind, it's looking for the joy. Find the social media content with a, hypothetically off the top of my head, a black male influencer who talks about mental health and cheese. You
Not
know,
me, because I'm not an influencer. I'm a content creator, Dr.
oh,
Kryss.
look,
There's
I
a
am not either
difference.
one of those enough to know the difference. I don't even know the difference on that. You influenced me. The amount of additional cheese I have consumed because you have talked about it in a video, and my brain went from I wonder what he's talking about to that sounds good is a real short line for me.
First of all, you're welcome.
Yes,
You're
that's the
welcome.
appropriate response. Yeah, yeah.
Why can you explain why does inclusion matter? Why is it important for someone who doesn't get it? Why is it important for those people that need to know why this is important? Can you explain why inclusion truly matters in 2025?
I think it's always mattered. I think it is a recognition that for many generations of people, it has been people who looked like white people in our media. It has been where white people could do anything, be anything, and black people were allowed to be either, the drug dealer or the thug or the one who abandoned their family in TV and in movies. We got, Cosby himself aside, we got the Cosby Show
Yeah.
that showed us wealthy, well-educated black family. We had Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I wonder if that theme song will ever leave my head. I think no, and I'm okay with it.
Yes, that's fine.
And we saw that was a family trying to do right by somebody who grew up in a rough area. And we're still learning, we're still growing. A Different World is still out there. I have done a full rewatch for those of you who have not watched it or not watched it in a while. Find it online if you can. It will be shocking and really upsetting to see how many of those episodes could have aired today, including the fashion, which is really weird. But why is that? Why is it that every show that has predominantly black cast does an episode where somebody, typically a man, is driving some rich white dude's car, gets pulled over, and gets taken in? It's not because those people couldn't think of anything else to write an episode about. It's because that's still what's happening. And looking at why is it that only a certain demographic of people get to see themselves represented as athletes or doctors or lawyers or other professionals or going to college or being seen or existing and being happy doing so, being safe doing so? Why are we making somebody's identity their whole identity? Right. Why are we good as a society at recognizing that if I asked somebody to tell me about myself, they could come up with a bunch of description words, but yet somebody who's gay is really just gay? That's all. The characters are sometimes written flat. People assume everything is because that person is gay. Same thing with trans people. Why is that? Why is it that white people can make mistakes and grow and learn and be allowed to do that, but so often people of color, especially black men, don't get that same forgiveness, don't get that same opportunity to learn and grow, even though we're all just people trying to figure it all out, no different from each other, but we get treated so differently that it's just crucial for us to survive as a society that we acknowledge where we are so similar and acknowledge if we are that similar, and we are, why do we treat different groups differently? Right. And for those who don't think they do, there's a saying of, would you trade places right now with, and you can fill that in with a trans person, a person in a wheelchair, a black man, a black woman, all those things. Most of us who are in the white community would not trade places. And you've got to stop and think about why, because you can't pretend you don't see racism, sexism, homophobia, whatever it is, if you know enough to say, yeah, I wouldn't want to be that if I could change.
I love this. Dr. Kryss, I appreciate you, and I thank you so much for joining me on this episode today. Your wisdom, your heart, your honesty, it's exactly what the world needs, and it needs more of that right now. For anybody that's listening who wants to learn more about Dr. Shane, I'm going to include links to all of your everything in the podcast description. So if you want to talk about training, workshops, keynotes, whatever it may be, I'll include a link, especially to Doctor's website, which is thisiskryss.com. And Kryss is not spelled the way that you think, so make sure. so make sure that you just click the link in the bio and connect on LinkedIn as well. You're doing incredible work.
Oh,
around the
thank
world,
you.
and I implore people that are not following you to follow you, because I think they can get something out of it. And Vibers, if this conversation sparks something in you, tag me, DM me, email me, comment with your own story, your own question, your own win, whatever it may be. I'd love to hear how you are growing, learning, and showing up for other people. And do not forget to leave a quick rating or review wherever you're listening. It helps more people find these important conversations. With that said, I want to thank my guest again, Dr. Kryss Shane, for being here today. As always, my friends, much love, good vibes, and I will talk to you later. Bye.
Bye, everybody.